Welcome back to Spank Ranch Garage. I got this Generac 5500 for free out of a deal I was working with a bunch of other generators, and it needed a pull start, so I went ahead on the old Amazon and grabbed one, and she fired right up, but it's got a knocking sound that makes me a little uncomfortable, and I wasn't able to determine where it was coming from, so I just parked it, and it's been sitting for a year now, or maybe even two. So let's fire this thing up. Let's see if we can hear that knocking noise and then go from here. So I'm not sure how that's sounding on the camera, but when I first started this thing cold, it didn't sound too bad, but as it warms up, she starts to knock a little. And part of the history of this one was when I got this, I checked the oil. It was like literally grease in here. I mean, like, it was so thick. It was either oil that's been overheated and ran for years and never changed, or, you know, somebody put some, like, you know, gear lube in it to sell it so it wouldn't knock. I changed the oil 2 or 3 times to flush all that crap out. And then once I let the thing get hot, I started to hear this knock. So I'm thinking, all right, this thing's got a rod knock or something else. But, you know, as I got literally $15 into this unit, it's a good running unit. The gas tank's not rusted out, starts, runs, makes power. I think it's worth trying to fix this thing before it blows up and puts a rod through the side of the block. I need a spare generator to leave at our mountain property, and this is a perfect one if I can fix it really cheap, because if it goes missing, you know, I'm not too deep into this thing anyway. So let's get started on it. Let's put the spark plug out. I can't say for sure what that is, but it seems to be rotating assembly related. Now, I know these generators are becoming very throwaway these days, but still, I've been able to sell these for like 400 bucks, 420 bucks, so they're not worthless either. So I think it is worth putting a couple hours into this and seeing if we can make it happen. Luckily, you can see here, Generac threaded the end of this. If they didn't, I'd probably have to do that myself or get fancy. To pull that armature off the engine, it's like tapered onto the shaft in there, so it's kind of a doozy, but we'll get her done. Looks like they dumbed this down and color coded it pretty nice, so. Okay, so that whole thing kind of just comes off. There's a stink bug in there, living life. And then that's connected directly to the crankshaft, and that's the thing that's pretty challenging to get off. So I already screwed up and broke the brushes off, and so you don't do the same thing. This is what I get for just raw dogging this without any research. This is the brush carrier here. You're gonna wanna remove that before you try to slide this off, because down in there is the brush carrier. The brushes ride on a smaller diameter than the bearing does. So if you just go ahead and pull that off like I just did, the bearing will catch the brushes and break them. Here's the brush carrier and the broken off brushes. $6.99 to get these replacements. I'm never going to financially recover from this. And here is to use a bolt that fits the end of this armature shaft and this little steel rod. Run this all the way down into the bottom of the crankshaft threads, cut this, and then use this bolt as a puller. If this rod isn't stiff enough and doesn't do the job, then I'll have to basically make another bolt on the lathe, turn a piece that threads into the crank that's a nice diameter, and then push against that. But I'm hoping I can get away with this little cheapie here. Let it go in about a bolt diameter and a half there. Let's see. All right, there she goes. Actually scared me a little bit there, thinking this thing was wedging itself in there, but we did all right. That almost makes up for tearing up the brushes. You want to see something funny? That's the rod that I used to push this off. That's how wadded up that thing got in there. So don't use anything that small. Take your time, go to the hardware store, get a real piece of steel, but you know how I am. So now we're dealing with a regular engine. We can get back after it without the whole generator part involved. I do still hear the noise. That proves that it was, you know, in the engine, it wasn't anything on the generator creating that knock. It's really starting to sound more and more like a rod. Yeah, so this oil has like 5-10 minutes of runtime on it maybe. It's already that crappy. So this engine has seen some trauma. Ooh, it's counterweighted. That is another potential source of noise. First thing we see here is just signs of neglect. I mean, this is really sludged out and it shouldn't be. Let's investigate this connecting rod. Let's investigate the balance shaft. Also the camshaft. A lot of things in here can make a sound just like what we were hearing. Counterbalance shaft is out. Cam is out. Lifters, tappets. Not super impressed with how that looks. Oof. Doesn't look great either. They could use a little polish. The decompression mechanism all look okay. It's kind of hard to tell. Pull the piston out and then evaluate from there. Good idea for isolating this sound would be to put this back on now with all the other guts removed and see if we still have the knock, and if we do, then we know it's crankshaft piston rod related. Man, it is much reduced. I wonder if this counterbalance shaft teeth are worn and it's slapping around or something. So that balance shaft runs on a bearing on both sides. That's where the camshaft only rides on bushings. It's kind of hard to tell. Crank doesn't appear scored, nor does the bearing. It's got wear, but we know the oil was never changed. We're gonna see wear. That side to side must be normal because there's absolutely no wear on these pads here. These would touch the webbing if that was a problem. I'm like a total idiot with lawnmower type little engines. I don't work with these. I don't know what's normal, what's acceptable. I'm gonna take the freaking crank out and then try to pull the piston rod out the bottom. This is hokey, but it might save me a head gasket. Ooh, maybe. I'll be damned. I've never pulled a piston out the bottom of an engine before, but that is cool. All right, now we can really evaluate what's going on here. Not even gonna touch the head gasket, valve train, nothing. Very, very, very slight play, if any. Bearings all feel good. What the heck could that noise be? So the rod is very round. We know that. I wouldn't expect to find a worn steel crank on an aluminum rod. I got 2/2000 and 3/10. I mean, I don't think it gets any better than that. This rod is not the problem here. We got something else going on. Some brief research. Seems like those specs are spot on. You know, that's actually on the tight side. Not our problem. So let's figure out what the heck that knock was. So it's possible that if this gear fitment is not very good when that rear casing is on, that, you know, we've got wear on these gears here and the camshaft is chattering a little. That's a stretch. If that's the case, I mean, really, the reason I'm in here is to make sure this thing's not going to blow up and catastrophically destruct itself. If it's just going to make this noise forever and there's really nothing to worry about, that's okay, but I just got to know that. So totally blows tearing into this and not finding a, you know, super obvious root cause. I'm going to spend a little more time playing around with it, but probably going to start putting it back together. And, you know, it's not going to throw a rod. We know that. Maybe due to crappy maintenance and them never changing the oil, maybe these gears have developed more slop than they should have, you know, but it's hard to tell because they're not supported on the big end right now. Once they're supported, you know, that lash may go away. There's going to be some, but I don't know. But the rotating assembly, the most crucial part of the engine and the part that's going to do the most damage, is in great shape. Here's a new perspective of your cylinder head here from the bottom. You see anything wrong in there? I don't. Getting these rings compressed to send this thing back up from the bottom wasn't the most fun thing I ever did, but she's in there. So anyway, I'm gonna put this engine back together and continue investigating this. I'll turn the camera back on if anything cool shows up. Otherwise, I'm just gonna throw this thing back together, let her knock, and let her eat. You know, I'm into it, 17 bucks for a pull start. Now I'm into it another $6 for the brushes that I broke like an idiot. So just trying to save it from catastrophic failure. It doesn't look like catastrophic failure is on the table now, so it is what it is. Just don't love the way these lifters are wearing. These are supposed to be turning a little with each valve lift event, and they don't appear to be. Both of them are that way. This is probably just Generac Chinese quality. The Hondas, usually they're pretty polished up there, so we'll see if we can get these things turning a little better, polish them up, and maybe hope that was making some noise on the cam. I don't know. There is pretty excessive valve lash on the exhaust, a little bit on the intake. It would be really funny for you guys and not for me if this whole thing was a valve lash problem and I just attacked the lower end for no reason right away because I'm an ignorant idiot. But only time will tell. Found a Generac manual online. They say they want 8 thousandths lash on the exhaust and 6 thousandths on the intake. Pretty tight, only like plus or minus 1,000th. But this thing's at 24 thousandths on the exhaust and like 22 on the intake. So we've got some room to improve there. There's got to be some slop in that cam gear. I mean, there's got to be some, but this does seem more than usual. Maybe that's the counterbalancer. That's probably more the counterbalance, or counterweight. Kind of as it loads up, you know, it's tensioning the back side of the gears, then it crests, and then it hits the front side and back and forth. But, you know, 3,600 RPMs, I don't think you're going to hear that. You can make sure these are clean because this is where your brushes are going to ride. Really, this is the only time you can get to these to clean these up. So if yours are dirty or if they're scuffed up, scored up, might be a nice time to touch them. Just like that. Your big old bolt goes in the end. Now with the brushes removed, you can install this the right way. Slide this thing back on here. Get that bearing popped together. Notice I'm leaving the whole motor floating. Nothing's bolted in yet. That's because all the motor mount bolts are slotted. So you kind of got to bolt this stuff together, then you can drop your motor mounts in. There she is, all back together. Really not a hard job. Once I understand how it all comes apart, you can throw this whole thing back together in just a matter of minutes. I won't have the brushes until tomorrow, so I'll see you then. We'll throw them in, start this up, and see if she's still knocking. The replacement brushes showed up. So Here's the ones I broke. Here's the new ones here. These were like a 5-pack of them on Amazon Prime for like $6. It's a joke how cheap they are. Maybe it's nice to have a couple spares. I don't know. I've never worn a set out, but here we go. So let's fire this thing up and see if she's gonna knock and make sure it makes power. I don't know exactly what to think with this one. It still seems to have a little bit of a tapping noise. The only thing we found wrong with it was those lifters really didn't look good. Other than that, I mean, the inside of the engine checks out. It's all flawless. So at this point, I'm not concerned about a catastrophic failure. We're just going to let it run and see what happens. You know, now with the brushes and the pull start, I'm into this thing like 25 bucks in a couple hours of my time. Seems like a good running generator. It welds great, throws a great arc, runs power tools, does everything I want it to. It's got a huge tank on it. It'll run all day. It's not rusty inside the fuel tank, which is like a big thing. If you guys are looking to buy one of these, take a look inside the tank. A lot of times people leave them, you know, at a quarter or half full, and the inside of the tank rusts out. All in all, a great generator. This thing starts right up, sounds good. It's got a little bit of a tap. It seems to be much less than it was before. I'm gonna have to play the video back to back and see if I can hear it with my own ears, if it changed. Right now, walking up to this, you wouldn't notice a knock or a tap. You wouldn't notice anything out of the ordinary. When you're really listening for it though, you do still hear a little bit of something. But before it was very obvious, where you'd have it running and people would ask like, what's going on, is that okay? Was it a camshaft related noise? Was it the counterbalancer? Was it the fact that, you know, it had so much crappy oil in it, we cleaned it out, put fresh oil in it, that fixed it? I don't know. I've had this thing running for 20 minutes. It doesn't sound bad at all. I trust it. We're going to run it and see what happens. So anyway, kind of, I guess a pointless video. We didn't really fix anything, but maybe we did. But maybe you'll find some value in it. I'll post this anyway in case you need to know how to take one of these generators apart or put it back together. If you got other questions, we could talk about it in the comments. So thanks for watching Spank Ranch Garage. I'll see you next time.